I want America to be a place where we don't just celebrate difference, acknowledge difference, tolerate difference, but where we know in the very core of our being that we need difference, like biodiversity, like barter, like trade, that difference is the way that we flourish together. And that is the America that I would love to build and hope I can. What I most admire about America is its willingness to work on very big problems and to further ideals in a deeply pragmatic way and in a local way. I've always admired that about America, and I always will admire that about America, and do think that our grace and our hope is in our neighborhoods. The story, I have two stories that always inspire me around this. The first is when Victoria, Texas had a mosque that was burnt. Gary Bramford from the synagogue visited Shahid Hashmi from the mosque and gave him the keys to the synagogue and said, whenever you need it, you got our building. And that's the kind of pragmatic pluralism that I think is the best of America and what we're made of. Another example, which I love even more, is when a young Indonesian woman who was studying abroad in New York, Dinar Pushpita, couldn't find a place to dance. And she loved to dance, and she was Muslim, and she loved to pray. She was committed to the habit of prayer 5 times a day. And the head of a mosque, she didn't have time to do both her dance and pray at the same time. So, the head of a synagogue, Rabbi Rosenblatt, decided he would just give her the space to pray in his synagogue in New York. And that is such a wonderful story, partly because it's also pragmatic pluralism. But when the story about him doing this hit the New York Times, he said, what's the big deal? That question of what's the big deal for my having done that, to neighborhood act, right, is, I think, what is the essence of America. The final story, which is one more of tragedy, was in 9/11, when there was a Orthodox women's university, Stern College, right near one of the trucks that held the remains of the victims in 9/11. And there is a Jewish tradition where before the body is buried, but when it's still with us on earth, you sing psalms near it as a way of witnessing the body's transition and honoring the dead. And this woman from Stern College said, this is a Jewish tradition. I need to do this. That truck is right next to us. So she took a little folding metal chair and sat next to that truck and sang the Psalms. And people spelled her from the Jewish tradition because it's supposed to be a vigil, all the time. And I love that story because Muslims came and watched, Buddhists came and watched, secular people came and watched. They all needed her to be Jewish so that they could mourn with her what had happened in the United States. And there was a pragmatism. It was completely about the neighborhood, right? This truck is in my neighborhood. And yet it became, with a deeply Jewish motivation, it became a universal expression of grief for so many people that was deeply meaningful. So that would be another story about working toward an ideal. Mourning the dead is an ideal that also was highly pragmatic in its nature.